Friday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand, happy to be back for another day. Hope everybody's having a great day out there today. Tremendous show coming up. Ben Goessling from the Tribune joins me here in just a couple minutes to talk Vikings, their offseason, an interesting one at that, who they've added so far, what they have yet to add, a look ahead at the draft, which is only a couple weeks away now at this point, who they might take, what they're still hoping to do, and a quarterback that they maybe had been looking at as a backup that is now off the board. We'll get to that at the end of the show after my conversation with Ben. Twins here in a minute. They lose again. A pace that is familiar but not flattering to the Twins. I will point that out as well. First, though, what did I miss? If it was just 2 days ago that I came to this space to blast the Timberwolves for coughing up a 24-point fourth quarter lead against Milwaukee, I must come here now to praise them for coming through, routing Memphis, really, last night. A huge third quarter, 52 points against the Grizzlies. In that defining third quarter, they take a huge lead, not quite 24. They had the lead up to 23 earlier in the fourth quarter, and I was like getting ready to be snarky on social media saying, hey, 24-point lead's the hardest one to hold in the NBA. They never got it all the way up there. They did, however, get a little dicey towards the end, and that brings me to some appreciation for two guys, one in particular. First one, Julius Randle. He's been doing it a lot lately. He's been very good in a lot of these scoring scenarios, made some big shots when Memphis had cut this thing down. Memphis got it back to 10 with about 4 minutes left. Desmond Bane misses a three. Julius Randle goes down, makes a tough fadeaway, gets it back up to 12. That was a big moment in the game when you're starting to think like, oh man, is this happening all over again? Is this Memphis team going to do to the Wolves what they did to them 3 years ago in the playoffs, what Milwaukee did to them 2 nights before? Is this all happening again? Next possession down, Wolves don't get a bucket, but Memphis goes down. Bane misses another three. They get the offensive rebound. Ja Morant goes in, gets fouled, but also gets a technical foul. Conley makes the free throw. Mike Conley Jr. makes the free throw. This is my start of my Mike Conley Jr. appreciation. He makes the free throw. Morant makes one of two, so basically like him going to the line gets canceled out by the technical. Now, they go down. Wolves are still up 12, but it still feels like anything could happen in this game. Still feels like it's dicey. And everything to that point in the everything in the fourth quarter felt like it had been either a tough contested shot like the one Randle had made a possession ago, or it had been a three sometimes early in the clock. That's kind of getting Memphis back in the game when the Wolves aren't making their shots. So they go down. They're up 12 still, but it's like, don't get a bucket here. Memphis cuts it in again. All of a sudden, you can see this being a 6-point game with 2 minutes left. Conley drives the lane. He's not the fastest, not the quickest anymore, but he's crafty still. Drives the lane, draws attention, slips a pass to Rudy Gobert for a dunk. 14-point lead, a little over 2 minutes left. That, to me, was ball game. Yeah, I think Randall's three, a possession or two later, iced it, but that, to me, was the moment when I said, okay, this one is over. They needed an easy basket somewhere in there. Mike Conley Jr. calmed them down. Everybody stopped running around, taking quick threes, trying to be the hero. He just gets an easy pass. And looks easy, but slips a pass to Gobert for a dunk. That's about the easiest basket you're going to get in crunch time, a dunk. So that's part of the Mike Conley Jr. appreciation. He's not showing up with huge box score numbers. The only starter that didn't score in double figures, 6 Wolves players scored in double figures. Ant had 44. Randall had 31. Like, those guys are obviously the scoring heroes of the game. Mike Conley Jr., though, who I have maligned on this show, who I have maligned on social media this season, has been playing considerably better lately. Last night, a plus 29 in a 16-point win, 141-125. Plus 29. Nobody else on the team was better than a plus 18, and he is a plus 29 in just 27 minutes. So basically, when he's on the court, the Wolves are gaining more than a point per minute on Memphis. And obviously, a lot of that has to do with him being on the floor for a lot of that 52 to 25 spurt in the third quarter and also helping them ice the game late. But man, a plus 29, 8 points, 9 assists, the calming presence. Again, and I'm going into this thinking, why is Conley still in the lineup? What is his place on a postseason lineup? Not roster, but lineup. Where is he? Where does he fit into the overall scheme of things? And then you watch a game like that, you watch them start to panic again, and you get a fuller appreciation for what Mike Conley can still do, even if his physical skills are not what they used to be. Even post-game, he was calm. Here's Conley after the game talking about them pulling this one out and what it felt like.
It's kind of what we expected, honestly, and just happy that we came in here with that mindset. Didn't let their runs affect us the way that we had in the past. It's not easy to lose a game like we did in Milwaukee and come back and find it again, and we were able to find it early in that third, and our defense kind of set the tone for the rest of the game, and the guys were ready to play.
Now, the big picture of this win is that the Wolves have guaranteed that they will be in the playoffs, avoid the play-in if they win their last 2 games. Both of those games, we've been looking at them for a long time. Very winnable games. Home games. First one tonight against Brooklyn. Brooklyn going nowhere this season. I'm sure they just want the season to be over, but you got to be professional. You got to win that game. And then Sunday against Utah, one of the worst teams in the league, still probably battling for ping-pong balls, trying to get the top pick in the draft. Again, both those games against non-playoff teams, against teams that hope the season's going to be over soon, that just want this to be over with, they got to take care of business. But if they do, they are guaranteed of being no worse than 6th, because even though they're still 8th right now, you got the matchups coming up. Grizzlies and Denver tonight. That's a huge one. One of those 2 teams will lose. One of those teams will fall down further in the standings. Clippers against the Warriors in the last game of the regular season. One of those teams will lose. Wolves will be guaranteed of no worse than 6th if they win their last 2 games. The most likely scenario right now, according to the Basketball Reference playoff probability page that I visit way too often, 4th seed. That is the Wolves' most likely seed right now, based on thinking they're going to win their last 2 games. Everybody else, much tougher games that they're competing against, enough advantageous tiebreakers against the right teams that they could vault all the way to 4th. That's like 40% chance they're 4th, 25% chance they're 5th. So their most likely outcome is being in that 4-5 series, which would put them into the Oklahoma City bracket if they were able to advance. Most likely matchup is Wolves-Clippers in that 4-5 series, which I think would be a great series. I would take that if I'm the Wolves. I think I would go with that if I'm the Wolves. I think they would match up okay against the Clippers. They've done well against the Clippers so far this season. So a lot of basketball still to play. We don't know how this is all going to shake out, but what we do know is if the Wolves win their last 2 games against Brooklyn tonight and Utah on Sunday, they will avoid the play-in, be no worse than 6th, and have a very good chance of being at either the 4 or the 5 by the end of the season. The Twins, on the other hand, lose again to the Royals, 3-2. Twins had a 2-1 lead in the 7th inning. Royals rally for 2 runs. In the 7th, Cole Sands gives up 2 runs. 3-2 is your final. Twins don't add on enough on offense. That's been a gripe of mine throughout this season, throughout last season. Just not enough offense in there. 4-9 on the season now. 4-9 on the season. Significance of that is they're off to a terrible start. And the significance of that is, remember last season when they finished 12-27 over their last 39 games to fall out of near certain playoff position and finish the season 82-80 outside of the playoff race. 4-9 is the exact same pace as 12-27. If you go 4-9, 4-9, 4-9, you get 12-27. So this is the exact same thing they did over the last 39 games. It's just the first 13 this season is an extension of that, both in the eye test and in the pace right now, 4-9. Home now for a bunch of games. You got Detroit, you got the Mets. Should be interesting. It's still early. I know we keep saying that. It's just April 11th, but this does not look like a good team. Maybe on this homestand they get it going a little bit more. Can't get it all back in one game, but right now they just don't seem like they've got it. We'll see if they get any better this season, but it's been negative so far. They keep saying we're close, we're close, we're close. A lot of games are close. You got to find a way to win those games. They're not finding a way to win those games right now.
In studio today with Ben Goessling from the Star Tribune, of course. Going to talk some Vikings today. Ben, how you doing?
I'm doing well. We are in the studio. It's a rare live daily delivery recording.
It's not live, but together in person.
We're in the same room.
In the same room, sharing a space with each other. Not we do this when we're in Egan, but we don't.
Yes.
We are not often in the studio here, and soon there'll be 2 studios here.
Yes.
By the way, which will be nice. This we're finding out with a crowded schedule today. You were down in the meetings in Florida last week. Some interesting things to come out of that. We heard from Kevin O'Connell, Vikings coach, for the first time. He got his swing at the quarterback situation. They addressed some other things. What are some of your biggest takeaways about where we are in the offseason right now, and what particularly he said or what you learned there?
Yeah, a lot of the stuff on Aaron Rodgers, we'll just deal with it quickly.
Please
They
do.
have put it to bed. I don't think it's happening. The only scenario where this was ever going to happen was if he was willing to come in on a cheap deal, which I don't think was going to be the case, because a cheap deal means you don't come in with any assurances.
Right.
And I think if he's coming in to say, hey, you're competing for a job with a guy that hasn't played, he has a substantial enough opinion of his accomplishments in the NFL, and justifiably so.
Ego is what we can call it.
Yeah, I'm being diplomatic, but yes, we could call it that, and some have been right in doing so. But I don't think he was going to come into that kind of a situation. And his relationship with Kevin O'Connell, he talked about that. O'Connell basically said, we have known each other for almost 2 decades, going back to our playing days.
California, baby.
California quarterbacks growing up. They're 2 years apart in age. I'm sure they had.
Is O'Connell younger than him?
O'Connell is 2 years younger than him.
Of course he is.
Yes.
Yeah, he is.
He, passing camps, elite leagues, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
You get to know people in those circuits.
Of course, yeah.
But they've known each other for a long time, and I think there was a conversation and some intrigue of, hey, what could this look like? And they have basically decided to move on. I do know, there were certainly people in the building that were very interested in it, but they decided we're not going here because I think it just wouldn't have been the right set of circumstances. So he'll sign somewhere else or he won't, and then it'll be out there lingering. But I think from this point forward, I'd be very, very, very surprised if it happens. And then the next step is get a backup quarterback in here. The veteran that they still want, I would expect, will come after the draft, and we can get into the reasons for that.
Because that's the comp pick formula, right?
Correct.
Like it has to be after April 28th.
3 p.m. on April 28th is the close of the window that a free agent would affect the comp picks.
Okay.
Anybody you sign after that no longer counts in that formula.
And they think they might get 3 comp picks next year. This is where you get in the weeds. Two almost assuredly, unless they go out and sign a quarterback before April 28th or something else. Another free agent before April 28th, but possibly 3 based on somebody's achievable bonuses and stuff like that.
So I'm going to try to do this as
you went in the
quickly
weeds
as
on this.
possible. I went very in the weeds on this.
Super weedy.
This is like, where's the money Brzezinski on steroids?
Yes, let's play the sounder. Okay,
yes, that's mandatory. All right, so right now they think they'll get 2. Daniel Jones is kind of borderline, but it'll be basically Sam Darnold and Cam Robinson. They think they'll get 2. The way this could turn into 3, comp picks are basically figured out. You take the guys you lost, the guys that you signed, you balance them out. People cancel. It's based on contract value. It's based on playing time. And then you sort it out, and the net deficit that you have, in other words, if you lost more guys than you signed or lost more valuable guys than you signed, you get comp picks based on that deficit. They think they're currently at a deficit of 2, which means they'd get 2 comp picks next year. The key to this is Trent Sherfield's deal with the Broncos.
of course it is.
He has incentives in his deal that could pay him another $500,000. I think it's if he plays 40% of their snaps. It was in my newsletter last week.
Right. Sign up for the newsletter.
Missing
by
the
way.
numbers, check me on this. But if he plays 40% of the snaps and I think catches 30 passes, he gets $500,000 for each of those. So basically, if he's wide receiver 3 for them in a team that will throw the ball with Bo Nix, he hits those incentives, all of a sudden the value of his contract goes up.
And it goes up enough to potentially give them another, late round?
Probably like a
6th?
7th.
Oh, man.
But, yeah, Rick Spielman territory.
Yeah.
But they could get 3 out of this.
Okay.
So they're sitting there saying, if we can wait on the quarterbacks that we may sign for another couple of weeks, why would we screw this up and cost ourselves a pick if we can get 3 out of it? So that deadline, April 28th, 3:01 p.m., it's open season on whichever veteran tickles your fancy, whether it's Joe Flacco, Ryan Tannehill, someone else. They could also make a trade, which doesn't affect any of this. So if there was anybody out there that may be looking for a new home that may have some familiarity, that could be a conversation, I guess.
This is the part where I say, give me Aaron Rodgers 1,000 times before you give me Kirk Cousins again.
Well, it depends, I think, on how it fits in the room.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I don't want Kirk Cousins back in the room at all. I just don't. I don't. You may think differently. You had a better relationship with him. You had a different relationship with him. I don't want him back here.
Well, I think the reason I think it's possible is he still is familiar with the offense. Obviously, he and Kevin O'Connell are very close. The reason I think it is not going to happen, and if I had to bet on this now, I would bet it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It's a weird situation because you're bringing back the guy who Brian O'Neill said 1,000% I want to continue to play with. You're bringing back the guy that's thrown more touchdowns to Justin Jefferson than anybody else to back up the guy that you drafted and told Kirk Cousins forthrightly enough that you were going to draft. You're going to draft a quarterback that made him leave.
Yeah.
So you're going to bring him back in that situation. That seems weird to me, but if everybody can get over that, I think that'd be the only way it happens, and you'd have to figure out money and all of that stuff too. But the Rodgers thing, I think, is difficult because it's Rodgers, and we know all of the culture things that come with that. And you also figure, is he still that guy?
Yeah.
I mean, you saw snippets of it, and they may think, yeah, if we can get enough out of him, it's
QB
worth
whisper.
gambling on him. Yeah,
QB whisper.
Yeah, if you can whisper in his ear and make it work for a year, maybe you do it. But O'Connell also talked quite a bit on the McCarthy front of keeping him up to date almost on a minute-to-minute basis of real-time conversations that he was having with Rodgers, just so he was clear on it and he wasn't hearing it from somewhere else. So I think he was certainly mindful of the fact that this was going to be a touchy subject. Shout out Leslie Frazier. Touchy area there, my friend. But, so that's where we're at. No Rodgers. We're waiting on the backup quarterback. Probably April 28th, sometime that afternoon is where we're looking, I think.
If there wasn't this whole comp pick thing, they probably would have the quarterback thing figured out already, and then we wouldn't have to be like, but could they really get Rodgers? Because Rodgers hasn't signed anywhere yet either. He could make this easy too by just signing with the Steelers, and then we're not worried about this anymore. Then we wouldn't be talking about it. Then we wouldn't have used the first 8 minutes of this segment talking about Rodgers
so much.
That would be bad for Aaron. All of this seems to be leading to all the intel they have right now, everything that J.J. McCarthy has done to this point gives them confidence, at least, that he will be the guy in September. But there's work to be done between now and September.
Yes. Yeah.
That's basically it, right?
A lot of it is you are trying to give yourself an out in case he's either not ready, and there's no reason to think that. It's a meniscus. It's not an ACL.
Right.
They feel good about where he's at health-wise. But if he were to have a setback, or it's like, hey, we're just not quite ready yet. Because the thing I keep coming back to is they were so careful with the timeline last year, not wanting it to be dictated by anything other than we feel J.J. McCarthy is ready to take the job and keep it, that I don't think they want to have their hand forced now. So the reason you need a backup or you need a veteran is if they say, you know what, he's maybe ready, but we think this is going to be bad for him in the long term if we put him out there before the plan is fully baked.
Fully baked, yeah.
Maybe it's a problem, so we don't want to force something before we're ready to do it. That's why the backup quarterback gives you the insurance policy like Sam Darnold did last year. I think that's why they want a veteran here, is just to have some kind of insurance against those possibilities that doesn't force them into a situation they don't like with J.J. McCarthy. So that's why they're still looking to do it. The comp pick thing does keep this conversation going longer than we probably would be having it. And we'll see where it goes. My bet would be the Ryan Tannehill type lane is where we probably end up here.
Tannehill seems to make the most sense to me. He's like a little younger than Flacco. They have this. Doesn't he and McCarthy have the same agent?
Correct, they do.
So seems like that could happen. He's, not that Flacco can't still play, but he's no longer in the elite conversation.
Yeah, he's not. I mean, Tannehill didn't play at all last year, so there's that. But he's a guy that could come in and basically be what you need him to be, where he could run the offense for a few games if you needed him to. And if you felt like, okay, week 3, let's say there's some scenario where they say, all right, JJ's ready week 3. You could push Ryan Tannehill aside, and nobody's going to miss him that much.
Right, exactly. So that's where they are with the quarterbacks. What else between? I mean, it seems like this is going to be a pretty quiet period if they're just kind of doing their draft prep, waiting for the draft in a couple weeks, not wanting to sign any free agents to mess up the possibility of getting a 7th-round pick at some point. So I guess, like, what's going to happen, do you think, in the draft? Do they trade down? And then what still is maybe, besides backup quarterback, yet to be addressed in kind of that second next wave of free agency? Yeah,
I mean, I think I would keep an eye on corner if there's still a guy they could go get that's not going to affect things. I mean, PA and I were talking about Jack Jones the other day from the Raiders. I mean, a guy like that gets cut, I think they'll take a look at those guys, because if it's somebody that fits their measurables, if they think they can work with him and develop him into a more refined player than he's been in his career, he doesn't cost them anything on the comp pick thing. So guys like that, I'd keep an eye on. In the draft, I mean, offensive line is certainly something they're still looking at. I would keep an eye on defensive tackle. Even after they signed Javon Hargrave, Jonathan Allen, they need younger talent there, and they've learned that having those guys in waves, having those guys fresh into January is very, very helpful. So I know they've done a lot of work on defensive tackles heading into the draft, and it's a deep defensive tackle class. So I'd keep an eye on offensive guard, probably, defensive tackle, corner, and then maybe safety, because Harrison Smith obviously is back probably for his
14th year.
Probably the last one.
Yeah.
I know he's year to year, but I would assume it's probably the last one.
Is he on the Marc-Andre Fleury plan, where every year you think is going to be his last year, and you have to write all the nice stories about it, and then he keeps coming back?
He's kind of been that the last couple of years now. I feel like we started doing is this it for Harry stories maybe 3 years ago.
Too soon,
Yeah, he keeps coming back, and he keeps showing them that he's worth keeping around. So, but you have that uncertainty, and then Josh Metellus is a free agent after this year. Drew Rosenhaus reps Josh Metellus. Drew Rosenhaus also lives in South Florida. Drew Rosenhaus was at the owners' meetings a lot.
I bet he was,
and he got some FaceTime with the Vikings. So I would imagine there was some discussion of a Metellus extension. Metellus has already outplayed that contract
big time. Yeah.
He hit incentives that they very clearly were not intending for him to hit. They do not do incentives in a way that a guy knocks them out of the park in that fashion. So I think that tells you right there, he exceeded what they thought he would do, and then you sign a new deal to reflect that. I would not be surprised if they try to get that done, but you also have to think about the future there. They lost Bynum. Smith is uncertain. Metellus is in a contract here. Safety could be a need as well. And they like to use 3 of them in the Brian Flores package quite a bit.
And, I mean, we talked about all the comp picks possibly for 2026. They're getting one this year, a 3rd rounder, but still they only have a 1st, a 3rd, a 5th, and a 6th now, right?
Yes.
Because of the trade with the 49ers, the running back.
Jordan Mason.
I was going to call him Jordan Howard. Jordan Mason. So you look at it and you say volume versus quality. They seem like a candidate to trade down, but you don't just go into a draft thinking, well, we're going to trade down because the value's got to be there. But it seems to me that's a possibility at the very least.
I think it's a possibility. I mean, there's value in spots in this draft that if they felt like we can move down, say it's from 24 to 30 or something like that, and you maybe pick up a 3rd or a 4th even would be helpful.
Right.
In some kind of probably other pick swap, and I'm not sitting here with the chart to do all the math, but you get my point. If they can get another mid-round pick from a move down and still get out of there with somebody they feel is valuable, I could certainly see that happening. A lot of the process is understanding where the cliffs are. Can we move this much and still get something we're happy with? Where can we kind of press on teams to say, hey, move up here because there's going to be a kind of a surge for this player. It's not a great year to trade back because it's not a great quarterback class. But, maybe it's somebody at the back of the first round that says, hey, we'll take a flyer. on Shedeur or a flyer on if somebody likes Jackson Dart.
Somebody falls,
Yeah, I think there are teams that like Jackson Dart. So maybe somebody says, you know what, he's probably a second-round pick, but let's do the old Rick Spielman thing. Let's go into the back of the first, take him so we get the
fifth-year option, baby.
Yes, so there could be some of those scenarios that incentivize somebody to make a deal there.
What did Rick like more? Notre Dame players, fifth-year options, or seventh-round offensive linemen?
I think towards the end, it was seventh-round offensive line.
Okay.
I mean, that became like almost a competition with himself to see how many picks he could get every year.
Didn't he have like 15 picks one year?
2020, he had 15 picks, which I think set a record for a 7-round draft. The nice thing with that draft, one of the benefits of COVID was that we were at home for that draft. You're not sitting. Typically, the draft, everybody asks what this is like for a beat writer. It's not that exciting. We basically sit in a room.
Are we going to Green Bay this year, by the way?
I believe we are. Yes, I think Emily Liker and I may go ahead of time.
Okay.
And then I think Mark Craig is going for round 1. So we will have, we can spread our army of Star Tribune beat writers, Vikings beat writers all over the country. So we can and we will. But for the people covering the Vikings draft, we will be in Eagan the night of the draft. Basically, we sit and watch it on TV, and then when they make the pick, they come down and talk about it for the press conferences. But it's not that exciting. So anyway, 2020, that third day of it, we were at home, and I think it was like 65 degrees. I think we already had a hammock on our patio.
There you
go. I was like, if I have to write about 12 seventh-round picks, I can at least do it when the weather's nice. So that has stayed from COVID. We go in on day 1 and 2, but we've all kind of agreed on day 3. There's so many picks. It's like we could do these with Zoom calls.
Right.
So that is one of the few nice things that came out of COVID from a media coverage perspective.
We're going to get out of here in just a minute, but how many of those 2020 picks could you name? There were 15. And we make fun of Rick, but actually there were some good late-round picks that year.
Well, was KJ Osborne one of those?
Yeah, he was a 5th-round pick.
The Iowa quarterback, Nate Stanley.
Yes, Nate Stanley was a 7th-round pick.
Yep. Austin Cutting, I think it was 2019. So I think that was pick number 12 in 2019.
Yes, the long snapper.
That was when I said in the press box, Rick, you're drafting long snappers. It's time to be done.
Yeah,
that was like 12.
He was their last pick.
Beat the UDFAs. Oh gosh. Metellus was in that draft.
Yes, Metellus was the 6th-round pick in that draft.
Yep.
So.
Man, this is bad.
Sorry, yeah.
Gosh, read them to me. This is not great radio.
Well, we'll start at the top. Justin Jefferson, obviously with number 1.
Then Jeff 22. Gladney. Oh, you want me to start at the top?
I'll just go through. I was mostly asking for you for the later ones. We might as well. We'll get to the later ones.
No, Armand Watts was earlier.
No, Ezra Cleveland, 2nd-round pick. You could yes or no on that.
The needle
didn't work out great. Cam Dantzler, cover me closer, Cameron Dantzler. DJ Wanham.
Yeah,
that's decent value at a 4th-round pick. 27 career sacks. James Lynch, Troy Dye, Harrison Hand, KJ Osborne, Blake Brendel, a 6th-round pick, Josh Metellus, 6th-round pick. So 3 pretty good or good to serviceable pros. I mean, Metellus very good. Osborne has had a pretty decent career.
Brendel's
a starter. And then the last 4 were 7th-round picks. Kenny Willekes.
Oh, Kenny Willekes, yes.
Nate Stanley, Brian Cole II, and Kyle Hinton.
Kyle Hinton's still in the league, though.
Yeah, okay. So he's played 35 games.
I think he's in Atlanta.
Okay. There you go. So anyway, that was 2020 and all the picks. And we make fun of Rick in his drafts. He was a more successful drafter than the guy who hasn't gotten a contract extension yet.
Well, yeah, and it is funny. He had a lot of misses at the end in his drafts. his 2021, the 3rd round is not good. That's the round that basically ended his relationship with Mike Zimmer.
Kellen Mond, Chaz Surratt, Wyatt Davis, and Patrick Jones III is okay. He was okay.
Yep, but he was the best of those 4. And they needed immediate help. But you look back on that 2020 draft, and they pulled starters out of that draft. Bynum, Metellus, Osborne was a contributor, Brandel, Jefferson, obviously, and then 21 was Darisaw, O'Neal's still here. There's still some Rick
Yeah.
picks here. We'll give him his due on that.
Cam Bynum in 2021 as well.
Yep.
So, yeah, they had some better drafts there is the point. We'll see what they do this year. Still waiting on that extension we were promised was right around the corner. And now it's April. This is like 3 months since KOC's extension, or close to it, right?
Yep, and one point of clarification there.
Yeah.
Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah's deal does not expire until after the 2026 draft.
Okay,
so
interesting.
It is a different timeline for front offices for this reason.
Yeah,
teams do not
sense.
want scouts and directors of player personnel, college scouting directors, leaving in the middle of draft and free agency prep because contracts are up and they're not sure about, is this GM going to be here? You don't get into a situation very often where a GM is heading into an expiring contract because either they get extensions or they get fired.
Right.
But some of the general approach to front offices is deals do not expire until after drafts because teams don't want the uncertainty to affect the most important time of the year for a front office. So his deal is on a little different timeline than Kevin O'Connell's.
I would imagine a lot of the scouts and other people kind of in that realm have similar contracts that run through May 1st or whatever it might be.
Yes, that is generally how that goes. So his deal is on that timeline, whereas coaches are typically done after the season or February 1st or
Super Bowl or whatever.
Whatever it happens to be. For assistants, it's usually there's a 10-day window after the season. If an assistant is on an expiring contract, he gets 10 days to negotiate with his current team before he can hit the market.
Okay.
So at any rate, coaches are tied to end of football season. GMs, front office people are tied to end of draft. So there's a few months difference.
Yeah.
It still needs to get done, and I think it will, but there's a little bit of a different timeline there. He's not heading into his final draft of his contract. Let's put it that way.
Makes sense. No, something I never knew, so I'm glad you clarified that. And the most interesting thing that will come out of this is if and when it gets done, will he still be on the same timeline as Kevin O'Connell?
Yes, that is going to be very interesting to see. I would be surprised if it's the same, at least off the bat. I could see him doing a shorter deal, and they say, let's extend it if it goes well later on. But, we'll see how that goes because O'Connell got a deal through 2029.
Right.
And they generally want the GM and the coach to be on the same page, and I think they understand that contracts can affect those things. It can make it so that not everybody's thinking the same way.
One has more urgency to win now versus the other?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's usually that the coach has more urgency to win than the GM does. Right now, you can make the cases flip.
Yeah.
But so they generally don't want to introduce those dynamics, but in this case, making that type of a commitment to Kevin O'Connell was different. And Mark Wolf, I asked him about this at the owners' meetings. He said market dynamics played a role in getting it done that quickly. And you don't need to be a Rhodes Scholar to understand what that means. You just need to remember what happened.
There were teams that were interested in him.
Yes, there were. Jay Glazer reported that before that Lions game. The timing of that report, I don't think was an accident.
No.
I had heard a lot of those things during the season that teams were very aware that he was heading into a contract year and would have been very interested. So the Vikings knew there was going to be external pressure in a way that there probably is not right now for Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. I think, you win 31 games in 3 years, you're going to have a market.
Yeah.
But I also think he's been pretty, and he's talked about this, he's been pretty chill about it in terms of I will get it done when I get it done, and my focus is on the team right now. I also think he's enough of a negotiator. He's been on Wall Street. If you are the first to blink, you may be the one to sign something that you look back on and say, well, I should have just waited that out. I wanted it done for peace of mind at the time, but I didn't sign as good of a deal as I could have. I think his negotiating approach, and we've seen it with players.
Sure.
He doesn't mind the uncertainty that much. I think that's probably playing into it a little bit here too.
34 wins, I think, not 31. But that's pretty good.
14, 13, and 7. Thank you. Yes, 34.
Which is a lot. They both have had plenty of success. We'll see if they keep it going in the draft and beyond. It's an interesting offseason, especially because the quarterback uncertainty. But if everything plays out, it will be the plan. If the plan is McCarthy and enjoying the labor, the cheap labor and the fruits of that, as long as the quarterback can play, it's a great place to be, and we'll see if they end up having that.
Yeah, it makes it interesting when there's quarterback questions. But yes, that is the plan, and we'll see if they stick to it.
All right. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks.
Great stuff from Ben. One postscript to our conversation. Let's get to it in the cooler. Joe Flacco, not an option at backup quarterback anymore. If we've been talking about, hey, Joe Flacco or Ryan Tannehill as the two options for the Vikings that are not named Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins. And by the way, like I said, give me Aaron Rodgers 1,000 times before you give me Kirk Cousins. I will stand by that. Do not want Kirk Cousins back here. Been through that, done that, not interested in that. If you're going to go the route of a more expensive or more accomplished backup quarterback who could really compete with J.J. McCarthy, give me Aaron Rodgers, someone who has won a championship, who has played at an MVP level, not Kirk Cousins. But Joe Flacco is the name in my mouth right now, is the name on my list right now. Rejoining the Browns, 1-year contract for Joe Flacco, reportedly, according to his agent. So Joe Flacco, not available to the Vikings anymore. Ryan Tannehill seems like the most likely option for them after the draft, after April 28th, where he doesn't factor into this whole draft pick, comp pick formula that Ben and I talked about. But no Joe Flacco in that mix anymore, so you're not going to have that possibility. So keep an eye on that. One of the options off the table, but everybody's been saying Tannehill is the more likely one anyway, so we will see if there is finally a resolution to this in a few weeks. That will do it for me today. Plenty of great stuff coming up next week. Royce on Monday. See where the Wolves wind up. Could be getting ready for Wolves and Wild in the playoffs. Big one for the Wild tonight in Calgary. They can clinch a playoff spot with a win over the Flames. Until next week, I am Michael Rand. Have a great rest of your weekend. Back at it again on Monday.